My friends and my new friends, if you're here for the first time, thank you for joining us. Our guest is Jordan Gross, a very present person, an amazing writer, a great soul. He uplifts those around him. He's the author of Cloud9, but a two-time author now of a piece he actually put out in 2020. The publishing house took it down because it was so good, and it's now a book in physical form. You can pre-order it. One I will pre-order, one I want to physically hold because it's so good. I want to flip through it. But it's called What Happens in Tomorrow World. He's someone who writes with full soul and meaning and intention. He's trailblazing personal development through creative storytelling, a person of imaginativation, a word he founded with imagination, creativity, and implementation. So if you're into writing and just being a good person and growing, this is a good episode for you. So thank you for joining. And let's dive into Jordan Gross's story and much, much, much more.
I have a dream.
It's one small step for man.
I am the greatest.
You want something, go get it. Period.
But yeah, we'll just roll into it. I think one of the first questions, as I'll have a nice little lengthy, heavy, meat-filled intro for you, as you have so many different facets to your life. The one question I want to start with is, if you were an English teacher, what would you have your students read, and what would you have the class theme be focused on?
Okay. This is a great question because probably the only teacher I still talk to from my elementary, middle, or high school life is my eighth grade English teacher. And my eighth grade English teacher, the more I introspect and think about my entire story and everything I'm trying to do in the world, is the person who introduced me to personal development through creative storytelling, reimagining who you are, reimagining teaching other people how to live their lives, reimagining personal development. My eighth grade teacher, Mr. Duran, was the first person who showed me that learning could be enjoyable. So I'm not going to reinvent the wheel with this particular question, but rather I'm just going to share with you what Mr. Duran, my eighth grade English teacher, did in his class. I would switch it up so maybe we're learning about personal development topics as opposed to English topics. But he just totally reimagined learning. And you mentioned book, and the book that comes to my mind that triggered in me any desire to read. It was probably the only book I read in high school or middle school. I was in middle school at the time because I just spark noted all the rest. The only book I read front to back was Animal Farm. And
Mm.
there was social studies lesson in there, there was history lesson in there, there was a ton of English lessons from the way that George Orwell wrote the book. But ultimately, the lesson that I took away was a personal one, which was I enjoy learning when I am moved emotionally, when I am touched by certain characters' stories, when I can have some fun while being taught. And that's what Mr. Duran showed me. So if I were to create my own class, which hopefully I will, it would be teaching concepts in personal development. So positivity, communication, creativity, storytelling, finding out some unique and creative and fun way to do it through parables, through movies, through songs. Mr. Duran did all this stuff, by the way. Uh, and I would ultimately share lessons in that way, just like he did.
Mm.
So I love that question so much because it's truly part of my plan. I want to teach, and I want to teach in this way because it triggered something in me that I remember made me want to learn, as opposed to every other class. Even after that, even ninth to 12th grade, I only had a couple of teachers who I remember did something even remotely similar, whereas his class was the one that I wanted to come back to again and again and again. I
Mm.
want people to come back to me again and again and again because there is an element of entertainment involved in the learning and self betterment.
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend today about how entertainment is like a gateway into education. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it makes sense that
Yeah.
Disney does so well, right? It's like
Uh-huh.
Walt Disney had such a vision for he was into personal development too, and obviously he went through like the mud of the mud, like the way in Shawshank Redemption, um, the main actor goes through this 500-meter sewer.
Uh-huh.
Like Walt Disney was homeless at one point. He had to like
Yeah,
go through that to create his vision. But there's something in that.
absolutely. Look, the way that I see it is almost everything is personal development, right? Like children's books, parenting is personal development through creative storytelling, right? Like, is a kid just going to go to their room, or are they going to go to their room if monsters are outside of their room, so they're only safe if they can go to their room, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So, you know,
true.
the art of persuasion that comes back to it's all personal development, it's all skill building, soft skill building through storytelling, which is so great. And just to go off on another tangent, which I'm sure we will a lot as we chat, like you mentioned Disney and Pixar and the movie Soul that just came out, without giving away spoilers, but that's all personal development through this creative edutainment type of structure,
Yeah.
right? It's about finding your purpose and is that actually important versus living your life versus finding the flow states versus passion, right? All this good stuff is wrapped up in this beautiful story that a 5-year-old would love, you know? So there are these hidden undertones in the things that I love the most where you can really pull out the emotion from it and do some
Mm.
learning at the same time.
Yeah, and even on that note of parable or fictional, in order to inform people better, you're in the final stages of making your own with your new book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love for you to talk about that because it's only like 2 months out.
Hmm.
Um, but everything encompassing it, you don't have to go into the full gamut of the 4-day journey you went on at the beginning of the pandemic, but where you're at with that.
Yeah, so I mean, I will because that's just part of the story. But so the book is called "What Happens in Tomorrow World." It's a modern day fable about navigating uncertainty, and I love that subtitle so much, that modern day fable piece, because that's really what I want to do with reimagining personal development. And the way that I do that is through this process called imagitivitation, which stands for imagination, interpretation, creativity, and implementation. So basically, what I do for my stories now is like I love those old Zen parables or those like old folk tales, things with like a monk and a teacher and somebody who's of very high wisdom. But I want to make those
Mm,
stories more applicable to this generation, modern times. So I kind of imagine that old story and then I interpret why the story is important. And then I creatively come up with a way to bring that story into present day times. And then I just implement by putting it onto the screen in front of me and just seeing what happens, assessing the first draft, editing, and all that good stuff. So
mm,
that's why I love the subtitle so much. So it's What Happens in Tomorrow World, a modern day fable about navigating uncertainty. And it came about from the first 4 days of the pandemic, like you said, and I won't dive too much into it. But I just wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wanted to help people. And I chose the theme of uncertainty because when we got hit with lockdown, that was the number one word I kept hearing. The world was in uncertainty. There were unprecedented times. It was uncertain as to what this disease could do to us. It was uncertain as to whether people would have their jobs or not. It was uncertain as to whether we would, see tomorrow. So I wrote this
mm,
parable, What Happens in Tomorrow World, and it was based off of my 4 grandparents' responses to uncertainty. And my 2 grandmas are still alive, so I knew how they responded to uncertainty. My 2 grandpas, I just kind of imagined how they would be reacting right now. And it turns out that those 4 responses are optimism, pessimism, sage, like a very wise way, and then chill slash indifference. They're my 4 grandparents. So what I did was I created a world called Tomorrow World, which is an arcade. And inside the arcade is this giant crane game. And inside the giant crane game are 4 characters: Opti, optimism; Pessy, pessimism; Sage, wise wisdom; and Chill, that's the indifference piece. So these 4 characters are in their own situation of uncertainty, And that uncertainty is whether or not they're going to get plucked out of their world by the giant crane and put into the real world. So that's how the story goes. And I just ask, the readers as a parable to try to get involved with the characters and really analyze who you are. See if you're being optimistic these days or are you being pessimistic, and how are the people around you being? How do your actions affect the people around you? What do you think is the right way to be? Is there a right way to be? Are there any specific emotions or actions we're supposed to be doing in such times of uncertainty? So I wanted to put together obviously a resource about how to navigate uncertainty, but I wanted to do it just like, Mr. Duran showed me, in this fun, creative, lighthearted, um, and overall just an entertaining kind of way, like we said before.
Yeah, I love that so much, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to see it come into full fruition as it already is in the process. But one thing I wanted to mention as well is I saw an amazing tweet the other day that talked about questions are the answers. It basically said just that.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, in being someone, which is still boggles my mind, that you did 90 interviews in 90 days, you've done all these appearances, you've questioned people, you're a questioner. What is the greatest question you ask yourself? Maybe it doesn't have, I mean, it's a very, very narrow question with the one that's a very, very potent, heavy topic. But what is an important question you ask yourself in your journey
Yeah.
thus far?
So that's an unbelievable question. I thought you were going to ask me what's the best question I've ever been asked. So I was like prepping that answer.
No, we'll
Um,
put that in
no,
the
this
details
question
because
is
you wrote
better.
about that.
Yeah, no, this question is better. This is awesome. I'll take it in two directions. Um, One is going to be the communication route, and one is going to be like the life purpose, passion type route. So the communication route, I'm going into the therapy field, and with that, I need to be calm, level headed. I think that's such an important quality to have when you're communicating with other people. And people ask me a lot, how do you do that, right? How do you not be impulsive? How do you not be reactive? Um, how do you not ever say the wrong thing? I get sometimes, which I think I say the wrong thing all the time. But anyway, before I say something, I ask myself, is this comment or is this thought or is this idea just benefiting me? Like, am I just saying it because I really want to say it? Or is it benefiting the people around me? Does it truly add a valuable contribution to the conversation at hand? Or am I just saying it to say it? So that's something I'm kind of, it's honestly like tedious, but I'm kind of constantly asking myself that one question in all of my interactions. And I wanted to mention this communication piece because communication is such a huge part of everything that I do. Like, even with my writing, I ask myself that same question: is this sentence just being said because I want to say it, or is it actually going to make a greater contribution? So that's big for the communication piece. And then the life question I try to ask myself all the time is essentially, am I living according to what I believe or what society believes, what people expect me to believe? So my second book, The Journey to Cloud Nine, was all about that concept. I was somebody who was just completely living a life based off of external expectation. Like, I was told by friends to get into an economics major. I was told by fraternity brothers and soccer classmates to go into investment banking internships, and I never really thought about it on my own. So I just did it. So when I finally had that switch and started making decisions for myself, I realized how much more liberating that was and how much better I started to feel. So I asked myself that question all the time in the decision making, life living process. Am I living according to my true values of being unique and doing things that are different than others? Or am I living according to other people's expectations? And I hope all the time it's based off of what I truly value and believe in.
Yeah, I love those a lot. And there's a lot of unraveling with internally when you ask those questions, as it's kind of
Yeah.
like a take a step back to go forward, right?
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah, and I was gonna to the first question you brought up though about communication is I was gonna ask more about like your framework when writing of like do you write in a sort of stream of consciousness and then go back and edit, or do you write while continually questioning yourself the way you just posed it? Like, am I writing this for just me wanting to say it or for others?
Yeah. So it depends on what I'm writing and
Mm.
how the thoughts are flowing that day, honestly. I don't have like a set structure all the time. And what I mean by depends on what I'm writing, like if I'm sitting down to write a quick piece, I think that might flow really nicely, like a 1,000 word essay. I think that might just flow straight from the beginning to the end. And then I'll go back and do the editing afterward. But if I'm writing, like I'm doing this series called Lil Books, and they're like 6,000, 5,000 to 15,000 word pieces. But all of them are basically like 5,000 to 7,000 word pieces. And for that, I'll more so get a little bit into the weeds, like making sure a section is okay. And I'll come back to just a section and then I'll redo that. But the only thing that I truly try to get 100% right is the beginning. I need a good
Mm.
hook. You actually noticed that before we started hopping on the interview, but I need a good hook. I need a good story to kick things off. I need
Mm.
something that's gonna, build a curiosity gap. I need something that's going to gauge a reader and grab them really quick, right off the bat. So I probably take the majority of my time just getting a piece started because I want that intro to feel right. And then after I have that intro, I just kind of run through the rest, stream of consciousness, like you said. And
Mm.
then lately, I've been trying to really focus on getting better as a writer. So I'll put a piece away, I'll send it to somebody else for some feedback, some other people for some feedback, and then I'll just sit on it for a few days, let it look like a totally new piece to me when I look back at it, and then start changing things up, start changing up sentences, start changing up words, ideas, coming up with new things to add. So that's new for me though. I think it depends on what you're trying to do with your writing, your career, your persona, your brand, and what stage you're at. So like in the beginning, I wanted to get my name out there. So I was just pumping out content, pumping out content, pumping out content. So I was more focused on quantity as opposed to quality. But now that I've gotten to a decent level of following, um, I still want to put out a lot of content, but I want to focus on the writing piece. I really do want to get better so that I can put out the best stuff for the people who are in my world.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And I was gonna ask one question, but before I do that, I want to entice people to go to your Medium, and I want to just talk about one headline. Just I want to scroll and maybe go to one that caught my attention to just show.
Uh huh.
Um, here, where's one? Oh, here it is. So you do a good job of title, subtitle. So this one says, four kinds of friends you should actively seek to have in your life. And then
Uh huh.
subtitle, the one who tells you what you don't want to hear. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like you're writing the first paragraph already.
Uh huh.
Um, but I love that. I love that. But then the question I had was, do you have a flock of feedback people? And does that get annoying to them when it's just like, yo, read this, read this, read this? But how do you
Yeah.
moderate that, or like how do you do that well?
Yeah, so just to come back to that headline and subtitle real quick, that was like a fun piece about so the little creative piece as a part of that title was it's actually a Friends reference, like the show Friends. So the piece is about friends, and then every Friends
Ah,
episode is the one where blank, right? It's the episode where blank. So the subtitle is the one who blank, that friend. So that was like a little hidden Friends reference in there as well. I try to give like subtle clues sometimes.
that's
And
good. That's good. That's like a director making a new movie, but in the
yeah,
movie that came out beforehand, they like have a sneak peek in like the corner. I forget which
Yeah.
director did that well. Yeah.
I love that stuff, you know. I think that drives a lot of my own creation. Like I read all the clickbait articles, which are like the six, toys in Toy Story 2 that you also found in Toy Story 1, right? And you like find them in the corner.
Yeah.
I love those little hidden messages that people put in things because I love hidden meaning, right? I love stories, so I love the hidden meanings behind them. It all flows together when I really, really sit down and think about it. But anyway, to answer your question,
But yeah,
um,
and before you do,
yeah,
Friends, amazing. I went on a first ever time watching it, 2 week binge. I couldn't get
really,
off it. It was an
so
amazing
funny.
show.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even like a diehard like I know some people are. But I've seen a fair amount of episodes, and I know the structure of how the titles are made. But anyway, man, the journey of writing, I've tried to make as I don't even know the right way to say this. I've tried to not be as lonely as possible because writing can be a very lonely field, right? Just like entrepreneurship. And I do consider myself an entrepreneur, even though I am a writer, right? Or as I would say, like I'm a trailblazer who uses writing and entrepreneurship to promote this concept of personal development through creative storytelling. So with those titles, I kind of believe that I wanted to have a community around me. So I was very active about not just focusing on the writing, but focusing on the people who could help me with my writing, who could support my writing, who I could learn from, who I could, support their writing. So I do a lot of editing of other people. I've got a couple of Slack groups. I've got a couple of just individuals
Mm.
who I really love to go back and forth with. So to answer your question, like because I do, like I'm also an editor of a pretty major publication on Medium called Mind Cafe. So I'm doing editing for other people all day. So to be quite honest, like what if I ask for some other people to edit my work, I feel like it's well deserved. Like I've done my fair share of editing.
Yeah.
So I do send it to some people, but I do at times think I could be a pest. Like if I wrote a lot in one day and I want to send the same kind of article to somebody who I know likes that kind of article and I send them like four in a row, then I do feel a little bit burdensome. So I just make it open. I say something like, if this is too much, just let me know, right? I try to be cognizant of the other person, how they could feel, and just am open about those emotions and allow them to share them back to me.
Yeah, and to highlight to a high degree, Mind Cafe is absolutely massive publication on Medium. I didn't even know about till a couple hours ago that it was so big. You started that, or you're just the editor of it?
No, Adrian Drew, who's great, you'd love him. He's a 21, 22-year-old guy from London. He started it out of his bedroom like 2 years ago, and it just grew massively because it's relaxed and inspiring essays about happiness and mindfulness and self improvement. And I connected with Adrian uh, as a writer for Mind Cafe, like basically when it started, and just like I said, just tried to be a human instead of a writer. So I reached out, we had a conversation, right, and I was just writing for him. And then one day he was looking for editors for the publication, and because we developed such a nice rapport already, I said that I was interested in helping out. And I hopped on in like March of 2020, and I've been doing the editing for the Medium publication. Mind Cafe's got other entities as well. Like they have a print magazine, which is really special, and then they've got their social media side of things, and they've got a
Mm.
couple other things going on. But I'm the sole editor of the Medium publication, and AJ does like a day as well.
I see. I
Yeah.
see. Yeah, yeah. And one thing I know you have like three main pillars you started to keep tight knit to you, especially as you left like the corporate path and the
Uh-huh.
traditional way and started defining your own narrative and
Yeah.
own pathway.
Mhm.
One of them is nurturing relationships,
Yeah.
and right with what you just said, I think you do that so well with reaching out to a person because you want to, instead of trying to extract something from them. And it seems like one major learning I've had, and I know you're in the realm of entrepreneurship slightly, selling, the best way to do it is actually to not sell. So it seems like these things are counterintuitive, but you do it so well that it ends up reaping rewards long term. So I wanted to ask, like, your ability to maintain patience when doing those outreaches. I know even when you were starting the book, What Happens in Tomorrow World, you reached out to Ken Blankert, John Gordon, Robin Sharma, all those dudes.
Yeah.
Obviously, some might have not gotten back to you, but like you did it with a certain intention. So I would love to hear like your ability to maintain patience when it seems like things might not be falling into your favor in the short term.
Yeah. So this has been something, as somebody who's out here on my own for the last couple of years, and I have products and I need to sell those products to make a living. This has been something I struggle with so much. Because the first two books, I just kind of swallowed my pride, and I would reach out to people, and I think I did it in the wrong way. I would say, look, I'm just have this book coming out, and I tried to get authentic and vulnerable, and I would just say, I'm really wondering if you would share it, with your email list, with your social media, whatever it is, and I focus on the product itself. Um, and that was the most uncomfortable thing for me, because I don't want to make anybody spend or invest money in me, um, ever, kind of. I wish I could do this all for free, but I do have to make a living. So something that I'm actually more comfortable with, that I'm doing for What Happens in Tomorrow World, that I am so much more patient with and appreciative of, and feel better, more confident, more comfortable doing already, is I created a bunch of free resources, where I'm going to these same people who now I've reached out a couple of times, but instead of saying just with your audience, your trusted folks who you have garnered a relationship with, who trust you, who want to hear from you, instead of just pushing out a product to them, would you be willing to share these free resources? Once
Mm,
they're once they want one of those free resources, then they're a part of my email list. And on my email list, what I do is, it's basically like the Gary V jab jab right hook, except mine is like give 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 some more, and then I have this one book that I want you to hopefully buy. So that
yeah.
is uh the freemium model, the free method. Just give for free, give for free, give for free, and I just throw my shoulders up just like I did to you, and just hope that when I do make the ask to buy finally, people will. And then it's out of my hands. By doing this process, by being patient with this process, by focusing on the giving end, what's most important is I am comfortable with it. I feel good about the way that I will get certain sales.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, even if it worked, I still didn't feel great about it. I didn't feel like it was reciprocal. I didn't feel like I earned it. Um, so this, like you said, this patient process of giving stuff away for free and waiting for people to get involved, and then ultimately making the ask, that's just it's just felt better. It
Yeah.
feels great.
Yeah.
It feels a lot more worthwhile to pursue, than the other route.
Yeah, and then you're fulfilling another thing of yours, which is just giving the most value possible.
Hmm.
I know that was another one alongside nurturing
Yeah.
relationships, but I love that. I love that redefined method. It's kind of like a duplex alignment with getting comfy in the uncomfy, which is your first ever book.
Yeah.
But then also like you talk about your comfy acronym with morning routines.
Uh-huh.
So it's like finding something that works for you, but also uh, exactly that. Like finding something that works for you within the waters of
Yeah.
chaos in a way. Right?
Yeah,
Like Jordan Peterson talks about finding order within chaos, like you're finding yours.
absolutely. That's what getting comfy in the uncomfy is all about. It's like I'm still selling, right? Which is uncomfortable to me, but I can
Yeah.
find a comfortable way to get uncomfortable.
Well, the thing that was a breakthrough for me was like I had a really great talk with these two people, Brian Luna and this other his wife, forget her name. I think it was
Uh-huh.
Tina Luna.
Uh-huh.
He's an actor, writer. She's more of like a high performance coach for like high level CEOs.
Mhm.
And I was talking to them when I was younger, or younger being a year ago, and I was like, I just feel weird selling. My dad's salesman for 35, 40 plus years. I feel weird selling. And they're
Mhm.
like, don't say that. See selling as being of service. And when I heard that, I was like, blown mind. I was like, I
Yeah.
mean, that's just game changer. So
Yeah.
it seems like what you've done is just like you're being of the utmost service by selling stuff you know will help people.
Mhm.
Um, but the thing I wanted to bring up, going back to something you brought up in your TEDx talk,
Mhm.
which I was like, for you to make your story funny is a kudos to your ability to story tell, but also like your knowing of yourself. So in your TEDx talk, you talk about the quadfecta. I thought it was
Uh-huh.
hilarious.
Yeah.
You said you were overweight, you had long hair, cross-eyed, and your last name was Gross. I got a kick out of that one.
Uh-huh.
Last name is Gross. But you turn your weaknesses into strengths with being a number one soccer goalie in New York City, top 5 in academics, obviously with Northwestern. Um, I feel as though, like, how did you make the switch into seeing the weakness as a strength? Because they're two sides of the same coin, but to reframe it and see it as so is harder for some.
Yeah. So, and by the way, funny is so what I want people to realize about life is that there's always going to be seriousness going on, but the more we could laugh and smile and take ourselves not so seriously, the better off we'll probably be, right? But anyway, back to your question. So that experience you mentioned, that quadfecta, really came to prominence when I was about like 10 or 11 years old. So I can't, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I created this acronym when I was 10 or 11 years old, or I was reading books when I was 10 or 11 years old, but I'll just simplify it to a 10 or 11-year-old mindset. Someone called me fat, right? When I was 11 years old. And what I mentioned in the talk is I knew I was overweight. I was bigger than everybody else. I wasn't blind, although I did wear glasses, but I could see other people. I could see that I was bigger, but nobody ever said it to my face, right? Maybe they were saying it behind my back, or it was definitely evident, but nobody ever said it to my face. And a waiter said something along the lines of that a couple of my friend and his sisters were related because they were skinny, and that clearly allowed me to believe that I was not skinny. So I looked at it like this: like I had a choice in that moment. I had a choice to let that thought overpower me, consume me, have that be my identity, or I could make a change. I could, not worry about the fact that I was overweight, but do little things in order to not be like that if I didn't want to be, right? If I wanted to stay like that, that was
Mm.
fine. But I wanted to make a change, so I started to make little changes. But in that moment, like I mentioned the quadfecta, because somebody had said something bad about my weight, I realized, well, what else are people saying that's bad about me? And like you said, I wore glasses, so I looked funny. My last name is Gross, so people laugh at me already. I had long hair, so people always called me a girl. I might actually be the like quintfecta. I had really not great teeth at the time either. So all these things, all these qualities that I could just harp on and say, why me? Poor pitiful Jordan. Why does this have to happen to me, right? Or I could say, screw it and just push through it, push past it. Some of them I can't change. Some things you are not going to be able to change. You cannot control them, which were, for instance, I said like my long hair or my teeth, right? I can't change that, but I could tell a different story about some of the other things. I was bigger than everybody else, like you said, so why not use that as an advantage while I had it? So I was a great athlete, I was a good soccer goalie, good basketball player, good football player, good baseball player. I was stronger than everyone. So instead of looking at it like just being fat, there were some benefits to it, right? My last name being Gross, I could use that to be funny. People were gonna laugh at me anyway, so why wouldn't I just laugh with them? And say, yeah, gross, ew, disgusting, right? And laugh
Yeah.
with them. Being, having glasses on, looking nerdy. I was gonna get called nerdy anyway, so why not put my head in the books and actually,
Yeah.
be like that. So I didn't know at the time what I was doing, but looking at that 10-year-old kid, it was just a simple choice. It was a decision of who do I want to be? Do I want to be somebody who sulks about my misfortunes, or do I want to be somebody that changes the narrative?
Love every single piece of that, man. And I want to bring up that this year you have one word with experimentation as your word. Obviously, it can give its own definition and meaning. But for life itself, it seems as though if I were to pick one word, perspective is like a big one that comes to mind with me. I mean, we talk about narrative, we talk about storytelling. It
Yeah.
applies the same to reality.
Uh,
Through everything you've been through, and like you've probably been to some great places too. What is your one word for life, and kind of like a Rich Keller type way, right? So I know you have one word for yourself, but like a word for your life that's just like, I mean, that's it. That's a thing.
yeah. So the word for myself is trailblazer. But that's more me. My word for life is another great question, by the way. But I was talking to somebody today actually about my one word for this year, which is experimentation, and I think at least based off of the person who I've slowly been turning into for the last 3 or 4 years, experimentation kind of is my life word. I would say I do think that my life is like there. I don't know if it's real or not, but one of my favorite writers, her name is Emily Wilcox. She wrote this piece about main character syndrome, and essentially it's where you think you're the main character in your own story. You're basically creating a movie, your own life movie, and every decision you make is what the main character in that movie would do to make it exciting, to make it dramatic, to make it boring at some points, to make it not boring at some points. So I think I have a little bit of main character syndrome, and I'm trying to create the most exciting, memorable, adventurous, spontaneous story that I can. And the way that I do that is through experimentation, trying out different ideas that I have, going back to school, right, to become a therapist, writing books, writing articles, helping people launch books, editing people's work, all different things, right? And it rolls over to my social and personal life as well, like experimenting with different trips and different movie types and different activities, right? A sense of
Mm,
adventure. A couple of my good friends from the next gen community from Universal Dialect are all about adventure, bringing adventure to the world, and I think I try to do that as well through being an experimenter, experimenting in all different ways, and then at the end of an experiment, you have to assess what's right or wrong. So a lot of the
yeah.
times my experiments don't go well, and then I still learn from them and I move forward, uh, and I reassess and reevaluate how to push onto the next thing, the next idea, the next phase of my life. So I
Mm,
would say that, yeah.
yeah. I want to let that sit there and let that marinate for all, because that's very, 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 very powerful. And another thing I was going to mention, another last kind of research point as I was diving deep into your stuff, and I already am getting to know you really, really deeply, but and obviously looking at and everything you've done, you talk about in one of your Medium articles, I believe it was, the difference between thoughtful wishing and wishful thinking.
Hmm.
And one thing I used to hate was when people would say good luck, or like good luck. I just,
Like
and it
sarcasm.
kind of got to me eventually when I just like heard someone say, instead of saying good luck, say all the best or like something like that, right? Because
Mhm.
it's more of a switch in mindset, but also like when people say it like that, there's these mundane, simple terms that people don't actually mean with their heart.
Mhm.
And for you to like, when you write, it allows you to speak better. When you speak, it allows you to write better, so on and so forth. And with you saying this thoughtful wishing,
Mhm.
it's not wishful thinking. I just wanted to bring that up, and like, if we can talk on it, we can. But
Yeah.
I think that was a really powerful point.
Yeah. I appreciate that. It's just like you said, man. It's kind of like we don't think about words or phrases as much as we should, right? And we don't think about, switching what phrases mean, like wishful thinking versus thoughtful wishing. Good luck, what does that actually mean? A lot of little language things, like how we frame language is has a lot to do with how we see the world, right? Like, do you say
Mm.
it's partly cloudy, or do you say it's mostly sunny? I would say that
Yeah,
people who say it's mostly sunny are a little bit more optimistic, right? I would say people who say it's mostly cloudy are probably a little bit more pessimistic. Do we say I'm up for that or I'm down for that, right? It's little things, but up is probably connoted more so with positivity than down, which is negativity, right? So what kind of words do you use? So coming back to the piece, it was just, wishful thinking is the phrase that we use, and it's largely negative, because wishful thinking means you kind of have this grandiose vision that probably cannot be achieved in the eyes of some, but thoughtful wishing instead is like you've creatively concocted a way to get to this big goal, right? So I think about, I've been called a dreamer. I've been called an idealist, not a realist, everything, right? But the second I start to share the plan, that's when wishful thinking turns into thoughtful wishing. So there's a bit of intentionality behind the wishes that I have, and that thoughtful wishing makes it seem more possible to come to fruition.
yeah. There's a quote I had my brother gave me when I was young. I hung it on my wall. I still have it to this day. It's a goal without a plan is a wish. And to your point, it's that. And one thing I was thinking about in knowing more of you is like you are free flowing spirit and fluid and agile, but it's like a structured way to it. And it's, I don't know if you set goals, if you like do that type of thing, but it's like, how do you maintain that ability to swim, but also like know where you're swimming
Yeah,
without actually, having a map, it
yeah.
seems.
It reminds me of the Bruce Lee quote, just like be like water, right? Just kind of flow, let it take you wherever you want. But I'm actually
Yeah, I just watched Enter the Dragon the other day.
oh nice. I
Phenomenal.
actually haven't seen any of the movies, but I
You
love
should.
reading about him and his quotes. I'm actually I'm like that in a lot of ways, but I'm not in a lot of ways. The way that I phrase my routines and habits is I love routine, but I hate monotony. So I love routine, but I dislike the routine of a routine. I don't want to get into too much of a routine where it's the same thing every single day. So with my routine, rather than do the same thing every day, I have like underlying themes or underlying, instead of a specific thing I have to do every day. It's more of like a range of things or a category of things. It's like getting comfy, my morning routine. It's calm,
Mm.
openness, movement, funny, and your choice. It's not you have to meditate, you have to do a run, you have to do this, right? Because that will just make me go crazy at some point if I'm just going through the motions. Basically, what I'm trying to do in my life is stay away from going through the motions. I don't want to be
Mm.
that person in the movie in Office Space, the movie about dull work life, who just wakes up,
Love that.
has a cup of coffee at the same time, goes to work at the same time, does the same thing at work, goes to bed at the same time. I like the idea of that because I can work with structure, but I need some wiggle room within that structure.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on. I love that because I never had it articulated,
Hmm.
and now it is because it's like you need constraints in order to be creative. For you,
Yeah.
you are a writer, and you need a routine in order to get into that flow experience
Yeah.
later on. But it seems as though, like you just said, you're kind of like agile within that routine itself. I love that.
Yeah.
Not make
It's
sure
like
you don't
a
have
little bit,
monotony.
yeah. It's like a little
Yeah,
bit of controlled chaos, right? Um,
yeah.
because if it was just to be so free flowing, that's when you run into the problems. Or like
So
I said, yeah.
what? So would you say that's where spontaneity arises from? Because like you want to have as much spontaneity in like um moments where it feels like the universe is intervening and like this came out of the clouds, right? Kind of like your cloud nine living, right?
Yeah.
But would you say like that stuff arises when you make room for more stuff to more you have more cracks in your boat for like not boat but like your wall for stuff to just flow through,
Yeah,
you could say.
it's almost like planned spontaneity, right?
Yep.
It's within the structure, making sure there's time for new adventures, for new
Mm.
people, for new places, for new activity. I literally last year I had like 20 some like 19 or 20 things on a piece of paper that I printed out every single day, and I had to do that every single day. And one of the 20 things was just like fun time. And what does that mean? That could have been anything, but something where I was just having fun. So that fun could have been watch a movie, but it also could have been talk to a homeless person on the street, but it also could have been non-COVID times like go to a Broadway show. It could have been go on a spontaneous trip with somebody. So it's more
Yeah.
of a general category. It's more of a feeling, right? I'm big into like asking why, right? For people who have a routine, and I'll come back to that running example again. Why are you running? You know, what does it do for you? Why is that how you want to feel, right? Because, and this gets into like a little bit more of the morbid mindset, but it is important. What if running gets taken away from you, and not your legs are gone or anything, but what if it's snowing outside and you can't run? Why do you like to run, and what can you still do that running does for you that replaces the actual activity of running? So if what running does for you is provide you with this boost of energy that you get from exercising, then if you cannot run on a particular day, then drop down and do a hit workout for 20 minutes, and you'll still be able to get that ultimate feeling that you want. For me, it
Mm.
comes down to the interpretation, part of my imaginative framework of what you're doing and why it's so important.
Exactly. Yeah, the interpretation. I love that.
Hmm.
I really do. And overall, I think there's a lot of beautiful things to be said here, but for Jordan Gross, like you're aspiring to be a certain individual and affect others in a certain way. I would love to know like who the dreamer wants to be, or just like where you aspire to be later on in life. And maybe there's bounds, maybe there's not, but you only know that.
Um, have you ever read The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek? Or have you heard
No, but I love the concept. Love
the
it.
concept, right? So I think I have three infinite games that drive me forward, and they're all semi related. The general simple one is help as many people as possible in as many ways as possible. So right now in this chapter of my life, I'm going back to school to become a therapist so I can help people at a more formal level with mental health. But I also write articles so I can help people in that way. I also write books so I can help people in that way. I also send newsletter emails so I can help people in that way. That is infinite game number one, is just help as many people as possible, right? That's something that's never going to end. Infinite game
Yeah.
number two is a little bit more specific. It has nothing to do with what we talked about today, but I want to put a pillow underneath every single homeless person's head in the world. And that it's relatable because it's about helping people and it's about making others better. But there's other stories that go into why that's part of my infinite game, but that's just something I think is really a challenge to do, but maybe I can do it, and I'll live every day until I can accomplish that. But that's like more of a long-term infinite game because I'm not doing anything directly related to that right in this moment, but it's still in the back of my mind, something that I have planned for the future. And then the last infinite game is to destigmatize mental health. So now I'm starting that journey. I'm getting into the mental health field. I want to be a part of destigmatizing mental health by writing fun stories that show how important it is to talk about mental health, to reveal challenges, to communicate appropriately and effectively,
Mm.
right? So that's the other infinite game. It's something that is really challenging. So many people are working on that as well. But that's another thing that I'm doing. So maybe those three things, that's purpose, that's fulfillment, and I'm trying to really do something related to at least one of them every single decision I make. Not even just every day, like every decision I'm making throughout the day.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean it with all of that, something amazing will hit. It's like you're throwing darts at a dartboard, something will hit, but I love the meaning behind every single thing in your way of creatively doing every single, because it seems as though people pick a purpose and it's like that,
yeah,
where it's like let's hit it from every possible, let's be the soccer player and hit it from every possible angle to try to get it in the goal, and eventually,
yeah,
like, I mean, it's all gonna come together.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that, man. I will say my cup has been filled in this conversation. I appreciate you being on. If there's any departing words you want to have for the ears of the world, you can do so. But thank you.
I appreciate you, man. The being on this podcast all about dreaming. I wanted to say something. I don't know if I made it up or if some other people made it up. Um, there's no I in dream. So dreams have to involve other people. You have to work toward helping others and also involving others in order to work toward your own dream. So that's my parting little play on words. My writer's mind is there is no I in dream. There is no I in team, like the common saying, but there's no I in dream either. You can't achieve a dream by being alone or to yourself or a recluse, right? You need to get involved in community. You need to get involved with other people. You need to help other people achieve their dreams, um, because it's not all about you.
Hmm.
But thank you, man.
Absolutely.
This was great. Thank
Love
you for
that.
allowing me to share. Um,
Thank you so much.
is there? Can I tell people about like I want to give you some free resources? Do you give out?
Yeah. 100%. And I'll link it below as well. So
Yeah.
please give that.
Yeah, so I want, like I said in one of the answers before, there are a couple different ways I just want to give. So I've got 61 of the best personal development books that I've ever read, that I've ever seen, summed up in one sentence. Like I said, I was a Spark Notes person in the past, so this is your Spark Notes.
Amazing curation.
And I've got 27 personal development stories through creative storytelling. So those are books like The Alchemist, Go Giver, John Gordon books, stuff like that. I've got an animated trailer for my upcoming book that you can watch for free. And then I've got a LinkedIn community called Help Self, which is self-help with a twist, which is just content all about fun and entertaining ways to enhance your personal development. And just reach out on mainly LinkedIn, or go through my website and say what's up there.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that before with the LinkedIn group, and I will come from my angle and say it's awesome. You intentionally share stuff, and it's very engaged. So please follow that, people, if you want.
Yeah, awesome, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
awesome. You got it.